Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
They did not profile like a 10-win team. They profiled like 7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 to 22-year-olds emotionally ruin me.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the paper here.
Welcome in, Bruce and the Bear, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is the best place to bet touchdowns this season. And this week, new customers, you bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Download the DK Sportsbook app. Use the promo code BEARBETS. That's BEARBETS when you sign up. 2 words. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Joined, as always, up the top of the show by Bruce Feldman. And this is typically the time where I go through the kind of the schedule and the headlines and everything we're going to talk about potentially. And Bruce, I'm going to ask you to tee us up and figure out where you want to start. But I'm taking control today. I've decided where I want to start because it's kind of something that happened early in the week. And it's more of a news story now than anything. But I am completely fascinated at this Bobby Petrino story that, they're going to hire him for a second time as their head coach, right? He's going to get a second chance for a second time, just like he did at Louisville to be the head coach here. They're going to give him the job, aren't they? This is how this is going to end.
Bear, they're open to the idea. As nutty as that sounds, they are more than okay with bringing him back after the scandal-ridden, the motorcycle ride from hell. Or whatever, it's nuts. I mean, he's also in his, Louisville was a long time ago, and he left that program in shambles. Everybody couldn't wait to get rid of him. That was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And so you look at this, and you're sitting there going, all right, they've made him the interim. They're kind of holding their nose through it. They don't care. But it's the gauntlet that he's going to have to go. You look at the last 7 games, almost all the teams are ranked. They're almost all much better than the Hogs. Now, his offense is playing pretty well statistically, but man, I can't see him going 5-2 down this stretch. But if he does, man, we don't know if Rhett Lashley is the SMU head coach who's done a good job there. He's from Arkansas. There's some of the money people really want him, but he may say, you know what, I got a clearer path to make the playoff out of the ACC than I would out of the SEC. So if there's people that are not very attractive options, now if he goes 4-3, I still don't think they would do it, but it's Arkansas. I didn't think they'd get themselves into this situation with him in the first place.
I feel so strongly that they're going to do it. They're not going to be able to help themselves because of they loved him there the first time around. And I don't think they wanted to fire him after the motorcycle accident. It was just a terrible look that they had to do it. So I cannot wait to see how this story ultimately plays out.
Yeah, I talked to one head coach this week who said, I cannot get enough of this. I hope he wins out, and I hope he gets the job, and I hope they make a reality show out of it. And so we're not the only ones who are fascinated. People inside the coaching world are also wildly intrigued of the idea of Bobby Petrino set and ride again.
Speaking of riding again, it looked like for a minute there we were going to get undefeated Miami, undefeated Florida State, top 10 matchup at Doak Campbell Saturday night. Virginia spoiled the fun, but this is still a very, very big game for both Miami and their national championship and ACC title, and for Florida State to kind of right their season after getting tripped up last week, Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, Miami's playing really well on both sides of the ball now. We expect them to get Jordan Lyle back. He's their most talented running back. He got hurt early in the Notre Dame game. He has not played much, but they are deep. This makes them 3 deep in the backfield. I think the most interesting subplot to this game is, can this improved Miami defense, where Ruben Bain is playing like a legit Heisman contender, and both ends are playing really good, but they are much, much improved. But now they're going to get a real test with a dynamic running quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. They have really big athletic receivers. Deuce Robinson, we know he juggled the ball for like 10 yards last week and wasn't able to make the catch, or else maybe they're undefeated in this game. But still, I think we're going to find out a lot more about just how much better is the Miami defense, and are they really a national title contender? Because if they can't get past a good running attack like Florida State's got, we know it's going to be loud. How confident are you in your Canes to handle this big test?
I feel pretty good. I laid 4.5 on the look ahead line last week, expecting this number to climb because I thought there was going to be a chance that Virginia could pull the upset, and they wound up doing it. And much to my surprise and happiness, the line hasn't moved. In fact, it's down to 4 in some spots now. And the reason I say I'm happy about it is because a lot of times you'll see people get excited about getting good closing line value where you bet it at 4.5, the line moves to 6.5, and you got a better number, and then you wind up losing anyway. I think I'm like 5 wins and 7,200 losses when I get the best of the numbers. So I'm happy with my ticket. It's weird. I don't know what you've been reading or hearing about this game and the Miami offense, and notably Carson Beck. But there's this like weird narrative out there about him, and he's lost zip and velocity on his ball. Did you see him against Florida? And look, I know last year he struggled against ranked teams on the road, but those games were against Ole Miss, Texas, and Alabama, who finished 3rd, 4th, and 9th in the country in opponent yards per play. So those are pretty damn good defenses. And if you watch the Florida game, they were playing in a rainstorm. Like, he was basically throwing a medicine ball. It wasn't like DJ Lagway was doing any better. He threw for 60 yards. So I don't know. I think that whole narrative is a little bit blown out of proportion, and maybe a little optimistic thinking from people who maybe are on the Florida State side.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I talked to one of the Miami coaches early this week, and he made the same point. It was like the conditions were not ideal. As you said, DJ Lagway's talented. He was really, really struggling. And I think in terms of Florida, in terms of the Georgia versus Miami situations, I mean, look, I think he's got a much more aggressive play caller now in Shannon Dawson than what he had with Mike Bobo. I think that suits him better. I also think he's got a much better offensive line at Miami. And honestly, I think he's got better running backs to lean on than what he had last year at Georgia. And I just didn't think it was like a great situation around him last year. And I think that's why I would expect him to have a big year. And I expect him to have a big game here. This is, he played well against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, I know they haven't been great on defense this year, but they're very formidable, I think, going in. And I thought that was a big, tough spot, and I give him credit for that. The rematch here, this week, the other, another big game, top 20 matchup. You got undefeated Vanderbilt with a couple of nice wins. Alabama coming off a big win in Athens. The Tide is a 10.5-point favorite. Tide's a little banged up at linebacker, but I think their most talented linebackers are younger players that they're excited about and feel pretty good about, talking to those coaches this week. On top of that, they say that Diego Pavia, as great as he was for Vandy last year, they think he is much improved as a passer. This game is not on the road. We know BAMA has had a lot of issues being on the road, most notably starting last year in Nashville. But it wasn't just Nashville. It was a lot of other places leading up to Tallahassee earlier this year where they struggled. 10.5 is a big number for an undefeated Vandy coming in there. What do you think about that?
I like Bama in the game. I know Vandy since the start of last year, 9-2 against the number as a dog with 5 outright wins. And I know they caught them last year after they beat Georgia. It's hard. Maybe it's a me problem, and I get it for people who say that. And like, why are you doubting Vandy? But I just look at the schedule. You beat an FCS team. You beat a Virginia Tech team, which fired their head coach, who's a terrible team. You beat South Carolina when Sellers played a quarter, and then you beat Georgia State and Utah State. Like, their offense has been much better, But I kind of think the way that game went last year when Bama was #1 in the country, I think that matters. I think that motivation matters. Vandy's not sneaking up on him this time around. I think the circumstances are a whole lot different. And the way I was you were much higher on Ty Simpson was at quarterback than I was going into the year. And he had the hiccup in the first game of the year on the road at Florida State. But since then, he is playing like a Heisman Trophy contender. He and Mendoza and Dante Moore right now, I think the 3 top choices with Carson Beck right there, I think as the 4th choice or so. They haven't turned the ball over yet this year. If they continue to play like that and they don't turn the ball over and give Vandy extra possessions, I think it's going to be really hard for Vandy to keep up in this game.
Yeah, can't wait to see how this plays out. Can't wait to see what Pavia does. He's kind of mesmerizing in the way he has taken over the program and turned it from such a loser into one that people feel is must-see TV now. The game you're at right now, you're in Ann Arbor. You got a Wisconsin team that is reeling coming in there. They're 2-2. It feels like they're way worse than that. They're a 17.5-point underdog against the Wolverines. Talking to some coaches in the Big Ten, they have been very impressed with Bryce Underwood and feel like all of a sudden now they've opened up him for the run game. And after the first couple of weeks, especially after facing a really good Oklahoma defense, really good Oklahoma, aggressive, the way Brent Venables runs it, they have turned it up a notch since then. You give it Wisconsin any shot to hang around in this game?
Hang around, and I guess the loosest definition of the word. Yeah, I would consider taking the 17.5 here. It's just amazing how far this Wisconsin program has fallen. This is the second time in 3 games they've been at least a 17-point dog. You got to go back from 1993 to 2024, spent 408 games. They were 17-point dog twice. So, it is amazing that they've fallen off of a cliff. It obviously has a lot to do with the change in offensive scheme, and they really don't have those kinds of players. But I can see this as being just one of those kind of ugly games where Wisconsin, depending on what they do at quarterback, I don't even know if they've really announced or released whether it's going to be O'Neal or Edwards starting at quarterback. This feels like a methodical Michigan beating where maybe it's like 27-7 in the 4th quarter, and maybe Wisconsin gets a score to go in the back door.
All right, Barry, let's get to one of our favorite guy for the walkthrough, Sammy P. Sammy P, I know there's something going on in the swamp with Arch Manning that has intrigued you. What are you hearing down there?
Gentlemen, stop me if you've heard this before this season. Wise guys are betting on the Florida Gators. They came in and took +7, also took +6. Bear, this has happened twice this season. It has not worked out. Maybe guys are just trying to get some of that money back, but there is something to be said. Florida's D-line against the Texas offensive line, and Arch Manning, of course, has not looked efficient against great competition. This number got as low as 4. We finally saw some pushback on Texas at -4, but the big bets on the Gators at +7 and +6.
Sammy, it feels like it's a kind of a dangerous week for all these underdogs. It feels like people are all on the same dogs. It feels like everybody's on Florida. Everybody's on Florida State. Everybody's on Mississippi State. Everybody's on Michigan State. Everybody's on Maryland. Everybody's on FSU. Everybody's on Vandy. It feels like this could be setting up as one of those days where the dogs kind of have their comeuppance, and maybe for once the favorite bettors might have a day.
Sammy, I'm hearing that the Gators aren't the only trendy underdog. What else you got?
Yeah, to kind of lean into what Bear was just saying, a lot of public support. I talked to multiple guys in Vegas. There are 3 teams that I heard from multiple people. We mentioned Florida with the late pile-on. Also, Iowa State is a dog. Bear, people like Matt Campbell catching points. And then Vanderbilt, a very popular dog. That number was 23 last year in Nashville, and now it's only 10.5 in Tuscaloosa.
It makes sense. I mean, there are a lot. Look, people can say what they want about their trends, and people shouldn't always use trends to make bets. And you need to have some sort of support for somebody. But if you like Vandy and you like their offense and you like Pavia and you have questions about Alabama off with the win last week against Georgia, I think it does kind of maybe give you a little nudge that if you look as a Power 4 head coach like Kalen DeBoer, It's lost 5 times straight up as a double-digit favorite. It matters. Since the start of last year, 35 times a Power 4 team is lost as a double-digit favorite outright. And 4 of those instances have been Kalen DeBoer coached Alabama teams, including the opener at Florida State, and of course that game in Vandy yesterday, last year. But we know Vandy's been a great underdog with all the outright wins and the covers with Lee. I don't know. This would be Bama or pass for me, though, Sammy.
And then, Bruce, one last quote that we got from Las Vegas. Matt Metcalf, who used to direct the book at Circus Sports, said that his true number is closer to 14. When you hear somebody who's very sharp and very connected say that the number should be 14 and the number's only 10, 10 and a half, you're sort of waiting for that other push, because the early bets came in on Vandy at plus 13 and plus 12. I imagine, wink, wink, you might see some Bama support on Saturday, see this thing go back to maybe 11 and a half or 12.
All right, good note. Guys, let's get into the 2-minute drill where we can whip through as fast as we can. We had talked a little bit about Matt Campbell's Cyclones. Cincinnati's looking pretty good. Scott Satterfield has them turned around. They lost a close game to Nebraska, had a really nice win last week. Sammy P, are you feeling very confident in the Bearcats right now?
When I hear that Jack and Jill are lining up, Bear, to bet on Iowa State, yeah, it kind of makes me a little interested. Remember, this number did open Cincinnati +2. So we've seen it move through the zero, Bear. Not exactly a powerful move to go through the zero. It's not like a move from 3 to 6 or 7 to 10, but we have seen support all week long on Cincinnati from +2 to -1.5, yet the public can't get enough Cyclones.
And remember, this is something that we saw last week, the unranked favorite over a ranked opponent, and you had Arizona State, who was favored on its home field against TCU with the comeback and wind up winning outright. I think Cincinnati getting Corleone back is a big deal, getting Hoyer, their tight end, back. This is a team that Sorsby threw the 1 pick on an underthrown ball against Nebraska in the opener, else they could be sitting here undefeated. It is amazing that if you go back, since 2015, you've had an unranked team favored at home over an undefeated top 15 team 9 times. 7 of them won outright. So usually when the numbers telling you the unranked team is favored, I'd pay attention to that as well.
One other point on the Cyclones, they are without both of their top 2 cornerbacks out for the season with injuries. Both went down in the last couple of weeks. Sorsby could have a big day. They got a lot of athleticism at receiver too. And as you said, getting Dante Corleone, their best defensive lineman, back could be a huge addition. Bear, I know you watched some UW last week. What are you seeing from Jed Fish's program?
I did. I was in the Atlanta Airport Delta Sky Club and watched a good bit of watching Ohio State. I think this is something where you look at what UW did on the road last year, 0-7, both straight up and ATS away from Husky Stadium, 0-5 in true road games. And if I gave you a trivia question of, can you name the 3 teams this year which have not trailed at any point, you'll probably get Texas Tech. You'll probably get Miami. But would you get Maryland as the 3rd? Those are the only 3 teams in the FBS who have not trailed at any point this year. So it seems like Maryland, like we talked about a little bit earlier, one of those trendy dogs, a lot of people on Locke's team there in the snake pit, as our old friend used to say.
Big news out of Chapel Hill. It sounds like we're going to see Max Johnson at quarterback, Bear. The line has not changed to go from Lopez to Max Johnson. Clemson, though, 0-4 ATS. You know the boosters would love a cover here.
Yeah, and Dabo, I'm sure, would love to be able to run one up on Bill Belichick and North Carolina if he could. But it's really amazing. And this is kind of like the irresistible force versus the immovable object. You look at Clemson, and you look at a team that's lost 4 straight in 5 of their last 6 games against Power 4 opponents. And the one Power 4 opponent that they did win in that span was against SMU, who was in their first year in the ACC after being an AAC team. So like Clemson has really struggled, and then Carolina on the other side, it's just been an absolute debacle. Outscored 82-23 this year against a mediocre UCF team, and then in the opener against TCU. So this one, I'm going to be very curious to see what happens here this week, Bruce.
You want to talk struggling, Bear? I know you had your stat about teams that haven't trailed in a game. I think I got it. The only team that hasn't led in any game, and that is the UCLA Bruins. They made some staff moves again this week. Jerry Neuheisel, Rick's son, former UCLA quarterback, who's been on staff for a while. he is going to be more involved and take over the play calling with Tino Sincerity being shoved out of the way. Is it going to make a difference? They're a big underdog against a Penn State team that is coming off of a very heartbreaking loss last week in the whiteout against Oregon. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if Sammy has a play on the game. I don't. I did, however, play an adjusted UCLA season win total and laid a big price to do it. UCLA win total was up at over under a 1.5 wins at a big minus price. I have no problem laying 280 or so, because if this UCLA team, which hasn't led for a second this year, finds a way to win 2 games against their remaining schedule, Sammy, just got to tip my cap to the Bruins and move on and admit defeat. But I certainly don't think win number 1's coming Saturday.
I did not get there. It was Penn State or pass for me, Bruce. Ended up passing. I know Jeff Schwartz is very happy to lay the points. He loves betting against UCLA. They're doing the blue out, by the way, if you guys haven't heard. Yeah. I don't know how much the blue out's worth in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, being they get a lot of Nittany Lion, Penn State blue probably making the road trip out to the Rose Bowl. So we will be back here every week. You know where to come. Bruce and the Bear, Friday afternoon, early Friday evening. Just do a little quick whip around the college football world. Thanks for everybody for watching us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win.